My story's a little bit different. So I've been in my current role for 14 and a half months. Today is the 14 and a half month anniversary. And so my story is going to be a truncated version of my life and career, and it's going to be really about these last 14 and a half months. So when Daniel invited me to do this, and he peripherally knows us and knows about our company, and we've got mutual friends, and now I think we're friends ourselves. He sort of saw this radical transformation that had happened at our company with Dagger, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So there's a couple things he said to me. First was, come talk about this radical transformation. I'll quick talk about that first. 9.5 months ago, the state of the union of our agency was this, and these are sort of the vitals of the agency. And 4 employees, we had 3 national brands. 80% of our work was project work, so if you know the agency space, that's not reoccurring revenue. We had really shitty office space, no natural light, and X revenue, which I'm not going to divulge this evening. So 9.5 months later, market change. 12 employees, 8 national brands, 3 global brands, flipped the 80-20 ratio, sunlight now, which is nice, and almost 3x in revenue. So I'm going to talk to you tonight about our story over the last 14.5 months, what we did as a company to affect this change and to kind of make some major changes in the company. So that was one thing that Daniel said, is come talk about that. Come talk about that radical transformation. The other thing he said was, he said, when you took this job, I thought you were either brave or stupid. And you told me that last week, so I appreciate that. So let me explain. Walked into this home, which was our company. And I like this analogy because there's a structure, there's a house, there were clients, there were all these great things happening, but there were some fires that were happening that needed immediate extinguishing. So I'll walk through those fires. 6-digit debt, several unprofitable clients. And by the way, these guys are in the front row, work at Dagger. So I don't know how much you guys know, but some of them are newer employees. So I don't know if they've known the mud that we've crawled through to get here. Unhappy employees, out of cash, the verge of shutting down. So this is true. Think about why I joined, and so I'll give you just the quick background on the decision to join. So I was in New York. I was working for a big agency. I'd lived in Atlanta before, worked at another agency here called Moxie, and moved to New York. And got a call about this opportunity, and really just saw the glass as half full. And I made the decision. There were 2 main factors that drove the decision to do this. One was, and the stupidity or the bravery or whatever. One was, every important decision I've made in my life, I've fast forwarded 5 years, looked back and said, would I regret it if I didn't do it? And there's been some very big decisions that I've made in my life that I've used to guide that. And I said, well, the worst case scenario is that I fall flat on my face and I go back to New York and get a job. So this was something that I always wanted to do. I felt that the team that was already in place, the advisory board that we had, was fantastic, and I just saw opportunity. So what did we do to kind of put the fire out? So if you guys are working for an agency or a company, and the CEOs or the principals or the founders or whoever is not talking to you about the vision, where you're headed, where you're going, my recommendation would be to run in the other direction. So one thing we did is really developed a clear vision for the company. And I think that's important. We had a vision previously that was focused in a space that I thought was a little more commoditized. We moved and we're focused now in a place that is tapping into the zeitgeist a little bit more. It's a little more of the moment. People are talking about content, and so we shifted our vision. And not only that, something we do constantly is communicate that out to the team. And that builds culture. I think everybody's in the company now is really connected about where we're going, what we're doing, and we try to be as transparent as possible around that. If you're familiar with the agency business, and pitching goes part and parcel with the agency world. And that's kind of under this sales funnel thing that we do in the agency. But so growing in agencies, and Adam knows this very well, marketing, PR, branding, and sales. And we have a very growth-centered approach, and the reason we do that is, one, just absolute paranoia. So the average agency to client relationship is 3 years. So it's inevitable that our clients will fire us at some point for reasons that we can't control, right? So macroeconomics happen, and they lose budget, or our CMO contact leaves, new CMO comes in, brings their own agencies. There's all these things that happen. So we never want to lay anybody off. We never want to lose business. So we have a growth-centered vision to outpace the inevitable churn. Another reason we grow is, show of hands, everybody been on a winning team and a losing team? What's more fun? I mean, I think there's just a swagger, a confidence. I think that does something to the culture when you're winning, and there's an esprit de corps that happens that I think is really interesting. And then lastly, just more opportunities for everybody in the company. As a stagnant company, there's less things to do. It gets boring. It becomes humdrum. Same opportunities. So with more growth comes more opportunities for everybody in the company. So part of this was our, so we talk about starting April 1st. April 3rd, we had a pitch with a national brand that most of you probably know, and it was a effing train wreck. I mean, we were so bad compared to where we are today, and it was just because we hadn't practiced the way we needed to. We hadn't rehearsed, and so I think that was a big thing that helped us turn around the business and helped us kind of infuse some growth. So we got fanatical about financials, and so Missy Taylor and myself, she's our VP of operations, we meet 2 or 3 times a week, and we're literally just going through the numbers. And if you're in business, run a business, cash is king seems so cliched, but when you run out of money, game over. So we've been very intentional about making sure that we don't run out of money. But I also think that growth is dependent on speed. And I read an article, I think it was, talking about Eric Schmidt and just driving speed into the Google business. And speed is really a function of how quickly you make and implement decisions. And this grounds our decision making. So, we're doing this real time. We're deciding when we hire, when we're not firing, when we're hiring, when we're pushing back on clients, when we're out of scope, all those kind of things. So if you've ever been in the agency business, this is actually, if you've ever had the opportunity to fire a pain-in-the-ass client, that's a lot of fun. And Adam, as the one person smiling and shaking his head, yes. But what I will say is what I think is interesting, this concept of adding a zero or adding zeros. So if you have a $1,000 client versus a $100,000 client, the difference isn't that much. You still have to be on the phone with that client. You still have to serve that client. There's all those things. The throughput of the work is different, but not 100 times different. So 5 minutes. We got into this philosophy of adding a zero and just going after bigger clients and going after bigger brands. And something else that happens with that $1,000 client, they're usually marketers that are less sophisticated, and it's all they have, so they're always calling you about it, and they're actually more high maintenance than the bigger clients. So that's another thing that we did proudly. So this is a biggie too, and having been in the agency world most of my entire career, I've worked at agencies where I remember saying at one point, I was like, are we going to start taking out their trash as too? Like, when do we stop? When do we say no? And for us, we're pretty disciplined now and pretty intentional about who we work with. And quite honestly, right now we're behind on where I'd like to be in terms of our growth goals, but I don't want to sacrifice that to be working for a one-off project for a semi-abusive client has a financial company to subprime lenders or something like that. I'm just making it up. But, but I think my point is maintaining that vision and maintaining that focus has been really, really important for us. So that's it. That's our story. That's 14 months of radical change and kind of probably the 4 or 5 things that really we instilled into the business that kind of changed who we are and changed where we're going and put the fires out. That's it.